Guys, just what in the damn hell is Hoyoverse doing with Mualani? With this week's beta update, both Kinich and Mualani received some changes, and for Mualani specifically, all hell broke loose again because many people interpreted what happened to her as a huge nerf. So I'll explain to you what happened to both and make more light on the situation. Starting from Mualani, last week most of her main damage dealing multipliers already took a big hit. To contextualize things a bit, Mualani is first and foremost a character that deals damage to opponents through normal attacks, basically shark bites. The bites deal damage depending on how many stacks Mualani has, and she can get those by making contact with opponents through her shark board. Last week, the shark bites multipliers got nerfed by a lot, and this caused plenty of anger within the community. As a response to this, Hoyoverse went and nerfed them again. Surprise, surprise. The multipliers on her full stack normal attacks in particular are now almost halved in damage compared to what she could do in her first version, when I considered her to be on the same level as Nuvolette or potentially better numbers wise, so it's not ideal. But still, what if I told you that there are actually good news as well, for once? In particular, prior to this update, Mualani's special stance that allows her to use the shark in battle only lasted for up to 8 seconds. On the flip side, with the latest update, they basically buffed the passive that extends the duration of the stance, and she can now stay in that mode for 9 seconds and a half, more than she could in any beta before this one. As a result, she can now practically deal more normal attacks during her uptime on average. Last week, I estimated that she could only use 2 full stack normal attacks during her uptime, which was kind of a low ball to be honest, but still overall fairly realistic for the average scenario in my opinion. With this week's update, it seems that she can do 3 full stack normal attacks rather comfortably. Honestly, kind of depends. As I said earlier, Mualani gets stacks by touching opponents with her shark board with a cooldown of 0.7 seconds. This works very well against stationary bosses with big hitboxes, in which case you can simply stay glued to them and keep getting stacks, but it becomes less reliable when she's facing smaller enemies that can be pushed and moved around. Still, the number of attacks she can deal increased in either case, and overall this can sort of compensate for the loss she received in terms of multipliers. But can it actually? Truthfully, her having a longer field time on 9 seconds now comes with both pros and cons. The main con is that in many of her rotations I had her using the elemental skill, so the special stance, twice per rotation in rather long setups. Now that her uptime became quite a bit longer for every elemental skill, these long setups are harder to envision. Additionally, she now fits worse in setups like double hydro vape with Furina, because she now has more attacks she needs to vape herself. This idea was theoretically good because since neither Furina nor Mualani are super constant hydro appliers, Shell Link could sort of enable both, with some limitations of course. With Mualani launching additional normal attacks, I consider these themes kinda off the table for now. On the other hand, her uptime getting longer in a single window made her fit in more traditional setups better, specifically shorter rotations, even shorter than 20 seconds. I removed Shell Link from my calculations here because now the routes are too short to suit both her cooldowns and their energy requirements. But luckily there are plenty of pyro appliers that can enable Mualani actually, since she just needs to vape 4 attacks per rotation cumulatively. Characters like Daya and Xinyan seem rather competent in this role, with Xinyan specifically being interesting because of her ability to self-apply pyro through her elemental skill shield. This thing allows Kazuha in particular to swirl Hydro on an opponent while being able to infuse his elemental burst with pyro and reinforce the pyro application on opponents that way. But the most interesting team is definitely with Mona to me. Mona really fits well in short rotations because of how limited their buffs are in terms of total duration. Within that time frame, however, they are some of the best in the game, especially at Constellation 1, where her Omen buff will also give Mualani an extra 15% reaction bonus for vaporizes. Overall, I would say that in terms of teams, at least numbers wise, Mualani didn't receive a significant hit in terms of how good her best teams are, so probably it's not as bad as many people thought this would be. However, I think her great team choices definitely got more limited in terms of total amount, because of her changes in terms of uptime, total amount of attacks, so that's a shame I guess. I would say she's still looking pretty good overall, but definitely not Nuvolette level or anything now. Now let's talk about Kinich, but first let me remind you that if you enjoy my channel but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. So Kinich's changes were definitely much simpler compared to Mualani's. Just to contextualize his gameplay, through his elemental skill, Kinich basically locks into an opponent with a hook and starts spinning around him. During these sequences, he will be able to attack the opponent in two different ways. Some small shots that deal a bit of damage and some bigger cannon-like shots that can only be unleashed after he fills a point bar. The bar gets points in multiple ways. In particular, if the opponent is hit by burning or burgeon elemental reactions, it will gain a lot, and this makes Kinich a carry mostly for those types of teams only. With the latest update, his weaker hits received a small nerf, while his cannon hits got amped quite a bit. Overall, it's a net damage increase for a character that was already looking decent in terms of numbers and is now getting even better. Teams-wise though, I wouldn't say this change makes a very impactful difference because it's just a slight numbers rebalancing, like it's not that impactful. After my first Kinich video, a lot of people in the comments were worried that he might go out of Bennett's circle during his spinning motion and of course lose the buffs that way. But honestly, from what I've seen from him gameplay-wise, it's not really a problem, and even if he happens to go out of the Bennett circle for like a split second or something, since Bennett's buffs linger on the character for 2 seconds, he will be able to keep the buffs while going out for a bit, and overall he will be able to keep them rather consistently. The thing that worries me more though is that, as I said in the past, he seems to be very single target oriented. It really looks like none of his hits has that much range, and generally his main ones will only hit one opponent unless there are multiple ones glued in one spot. It's a shame really, because while his numbers look good, they don't look good enough that is this super exceptional single target damage dealer, so the fact that his AoE is poor is definitely concerning in my opinion. Overall, I would say that since a few weeks have passed already, Hoyoverse has a pretty clear idea of what these characters are going to be by now. I find it funny because in the first Mualani video I said that I was happy that they were one-upping the characters in terms of damage output, like making the damage ceiling bigger, because the opposite kind of makes the meta stale in my opinion, but now it's not looking like that anymore. Now both Mualani and Kinich definitely look more interesting because of their unique gameplay rather than how they can raise the standards of the meta. Of course, this is all based on my calculations and estimations, but it's just what I genuinely think, I guess. And I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe and bye bye.